It's well known that Funimation significantly changed Goku in the English dubs of Dragon Ball Z. However, did you know that they also did this in the English dub of the original Dragon Ball series? Well, they did, and in this video, I'm going to show you one such example because I'm going to show you how Funimation ruined Goku's proposal to Chi-Chi. So if you're a dub fan that gets easily offended, well, you may want to start leaving me some negative comments right now. But if you actually want to understand Goku and how he was written by Akira Toriyama, well, check out the video till the end because I've got a lot to say on this topic. The sequence that we're going to be taking a look at today happens in episode 137 of the original Dragon Ball anime. You know, that show that for whatever reason, a lot of American Dragon Ball fans refuse to watch, even though it's great and actually sets up so much of what would come in Dragon Ball Z later on. No, it's not a prequel, it's just the beginning of the entire Dragon Ball franchise. So if you haven't watched it already or read the manga, you absolutely should, so go do that. But maybe first finish watching this video. Anyway, specifically what we're going to be taking a look at is when Goku proposes to Chi-Chi. For any of you who don't remember, or if you're one of those people that hasn't watched the original Dragon Ball or read the manga, let me explain. This takes place during the 23rd Tenkaichi World Martial Arts Tournament. During this tournament, Goku is matched up with Chi-Chi. However, he doesn't know it's Chi-Chi. She's all grown up, and the last time Goku saw her was when she was still wearing her Amazon/Princess Leia kind of bikini and her Ultraman helmet. So Goku and pretty much everybody else is confused by who this girl could be. Although Ulan is the first to figure it out, so hey, Ulan did something. Kind of. Not really. Anyway, Chi-Chi tells Goku, "I'll tell you who I am if you win this fight." Goku wins, and Chi-Chi reveals that she is Gyumao, or Ox King's daughter. So, of course, Goku is surprised to hear this, but things get even more interesting because Chi-Chi reminds Goku that he had promised to marry her. So this actually is a big misunderstanding that happened back during the Pilaf saga. As you may remember, at the end of the Mount Frypan sequence during the Pilaf saga, there's a moment when Chi-Chi tells Goku, "So when we get a bit older, you'll come back to Yome ni Morao, right?" Yome basically means bride, or it sometimes is translated as wife, depending on the context. And Morao literally means to receive or get something. Ni can be translated a whole lot of different ways, but in this context, you can think of it as meaning something like as. So, Yome ni Morao, to take as a bride. Now, Goku doesn't know what a Yome, or a bride, is. All he hears is the verb morao. So to Goku, Chi-Chi is basically saying, hey, when we get a little bit older, you want to get some Yome? And then Goku says, I don't know what you're talking about, but if you want to give me something, I'll come get it. So he agrees to morao the Yome, or to receive the bride. In other words, he agreed to marry Chi-Chi without even knowing it. Unfortunately, this classic moment in early Dragon Ball just doesn't work all that well in English. You can kind of do it, but it's just not as smooth or funny as it is in Japanese. As for how Funimation handled this moment, well, apparently they didn't even try. Take a listen.
I was just wondering, are you ever gonna think about me again, Goku?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my, you're so funny.
Do you think you're ever gonna think about me again, Chi-Chi?
Yeah, it's totally different. There isn't even a joke here, and we lose the setup that ends up being paid off in episode 137 in the moment that we're going to be talking about now. So the big joke in this moment in episode 137 is that Chi-Chi says, you promised to take me as your Yome, as your bride. Goku remembers this and he says, yes, I did promise to take you as my Yome, to Yome ni Morao. But he thought Yome was a food. This is classic Goku, but also it's great because it pays off that moment that we just talked about all the way back in the Pilaf saga. Unless we're talking about the Funimation dub, because remember, that scene was completely changed. There is no mention of a bride. So Goku, in the English dub, he says, oh, bride, I thought it was a food, but he never said bride, or Chi-Chi never brought up bride. Where did bride come up from? Like, there's no connection here.
I remember! I did say it! It was back when we were children that I told you I wanted a bride.
This just makes me think that Funimation didn't know where the Dragon Ball story was going. They didn't know that this joke during the Pilaf saga would be paying off something like 120 episodes later. Because otherwise, why would they have changed that scene so drastically? So horrible choice there. But then we get to the next important moment that I want to highlight. So after Chi-Chi realizes that Goku had no idea what Yome ni Morao, or to receive as a bride, meant, then she says, so you're not gonna marry me? Like you're not gonna go through with your promise? And here's what Goku says in the English dub.
Sometimes my brain doesn't know what my mouth is saying. Good thing my heart does. Will you marry me?
Sounds really nice, right? It's a sweet, loving proposal. It's a classic Dragon Ball moment that is a total misrepresentation of what happened in the original Japanese. So in the original Japanese, first of all, Goku says, demo maika. Now I should point out here that demo, which by the way means but, is not in the manga. So in the manga, Goku doesn't say demo, he just says maika. So we're not going to focus on demo. It really doesn't matter. It's not a huge difference. It doesn't affect what is going on in this scene. So let's focus on maika. This is extremely casual and it means something along the lines of, oh well, whatever, screw it. And this isn't the first time that Goku has said this. Again, if we go back to the Pilaf saga, at the end, remember, Goku turns into a great ape, they cut off his tail, and he reverts back to normal little kid Goku. Well, when he realizes that he had lost his tail, he freaks out for about like 3 or 4 seconds. Then he stops, and then he says, Maika. And this is hilarious, as indicated by the fact that everybody falls over. This is a big joke. Goku goes from completely freaking out to going, oh well, whatever, I lost my tail, no big deal, within the matter of just seconds. And even Ulan makes a comment about this saying, you have a really carefree personality. And yeah, Goku absolutely is a very carefree kind of guy. He doesn't hold grudges. He doesn't obsess about the past too much. If something gets in his way, he shrugs it off and he moves on. So we come back to this moment in episode 137. He begins his response to Chi-Chi by saying, Maika. So from the very beginning, we see, oh, Goku is being very casual in this moment. He's just saying, well, whatever. And then he continues by saying, well, a promise is a promise. I promise to do that. And then comes the proposal, which again is extremely casual. It is not normal for anybody to propose the way that Goku proposes here. Basically, what Goku says here is something along the lines of, all right then, you wanna get married? In proper Japanese, this would be, ja kekkon suru ka? This is already a very informal and uncommon way to ask somebody to marry you, but Goku goes even more informal because he contracts the last part of this sentence and he actually says, ja kekkon suru ka? So if you were to translate everything that Goku says in this moment, it would go something like this. Oh well, whatever, I made a promise, so you want to get married? So again, this is really similar to that moment when he realizes that he lost his tail. He goes from really serious, from freaking out, to, oh yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, let's just go with it. So yes, there is a kind of sweet and storybook-ish kind of element to this moment, mainly because of Chi-Chi and just how innocent she is. But also, there's a lot of comedy in this scene. This is a funny moment, and the English dub of this moment doesn't really convey this. They turned Goku into a romantic gentleman who talks about his heart. That is not Goku at all. But there's one more thing that I have to mention about this sequence, because Funimation wasn't simply content changing Goku. No. They had to go and change Krillin as well. So there's a part during the fight between Chi-Chi and Goku when Goku asks Krillin, hey Krillin, what's a yome? Again, yome means bride or wife in Japanese. So Krillin basically says, you idiot! Yome ni morao, again, that phrase that I talked about earlier, means to get married. However, in the English dub, Krillin said something very different.
A bride? Roughly translated, it means your life is over.
For whatever reason, Funimation decided to make Krillin a character that hates the idea of getting married. However, that's the opposite of what Krillin is. Even at this point in the story, Krillin is very jealous of Goku. Krillin wants a girlfriend, and this character trait only gets magnified later on in Dragon Ball Z. It becomes one of his fundamental character traits. So like I said earlier, a lot of this moment revolves around that moment when Goku and Chi-Chi were kids back during the Pilaf saga, and that is a really, really tricky exchange to adapt into English. So I accept that some changes would have to be made. But Funimation made some horrible choices here. They completely erased the original joke between Goku and Chi-Chi, they completely changed the way Goku reacts in this moment, and they completely changed Krillin. So what would I rate how Funimation handled this moment? I'm gonna go with a 1 out of 10, simply because I guess they handled Chi-Chi okay. But before we close things out, let's take a quick look at how the Spanish Latin American dub handled this moment. And let's look specifically at the proposal.
Bueno, no importa porque yo te hice esa promesa. ¿Quieres casarte conmigo?
Overall, this moment and the rest of the scene is accurate to the original Japanese. However, I do have one small criticism. Goku proposes to Chi-Chi by saying, ¿Quieres casarte conmigo? Literally, this means, do you want to marry me? But this is basically the equivalent of, will you marry me? So unfortunately, this version lacks that same level of casualness or roughness that the original Japanese version has. But overall, the Spanish Latin American dub did a great job with the scene, and they even did their best to keep the joke from when Goku and Chi-Chi were little kids, and Chi-Chi asks him to take her as his bride.
Cuando seamos grandes, ¿vendrás a ver a mi padre y a pedir mi mano para que sea tu esposa? ¿Ah? ¿Y qué me vas a dar? Ay, no me preguntes eso, tú lo sabes.
The joke doesn't work as well as it does in the original Japanese, but at least they tried, and they preserved that, so this scene in episode 137 makes a lot more sense. So what would I rate this version? Well, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. So yet another win for Mexico. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and let me know what you think. Did you know that the Funimation dub of Dragon Ball changed this scene so drastically? Also, I want to know about other dubs of Dragon Ball and how they handled this scene. So if you've watched other versions of Dragon Ball, let me know. I really love reading those comments. So don't forget to subscribe. I will be doing more videos, more dub comparisons, and other stuff coming soon. So hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. Leave me a like, and I'll see you in the next one.